Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Redneck Racing. Today's episode is going to be all about the roll cage. You can kind of see in the background we got a little bit of stuff done. I'll show you guys that here in a second. You can see I've got a helmet up there so we can check helmet clearances. We've got a fancy pants new Kirky full containment seat. So the first thing we're doing is we're getting the body to sit down on the frame completely flush. At the end of the last video we kind of just set it on here and didn't clearance some things that needed to be clearanced. So you can actually see right here we have to cut out this chunk of the body to fit over our frame rails here. We got the bushings put underneath the floor so we have that at the proper height. Now we're going to start planning out where we want the main hoop to go and get some ideas on how we want to get our number 12 bars to go through the dash in this area. We did get the main hoop bent. It actually seems like it worked out pretty good. The only thing we got to do is trim that leg off a little bit. That's because we messed up some of our bends a little bit. Basically, whenever you're using any bender, wherever you want the bend to start and where you put your strap, you can see there's about that much distance, and we forgot about that the first bend we did, so it pushed everything over one way. Fortunately, we left ourselves about 6 inches extra on this. That's why you leave yourself a little extra room when you're doing this stuff, especially when you're doing it the first time like we are. Alright, so I'll explain a little bit better what I was talking about over there with needing to account for the distance on the strap. This is a test piece. We just had a little bit left over from doing the floor structure, so we decided to use this. So what we did before we bent it is we put a mark every inch all the way along this tube and then bent it as far as our bender would go. And then what you want to do is measure from where you put the strap, which to bend this piece we put the strap right here, and then look and see where your bend starts and then measure this distance. So in our case, this distance is 2 3/16 of an inch, and that's we found to be pretty consistent on all the bends we've made so far with 1 5/8 tubing. Now to find where your bend starts, you can kind of see on the inside right where it starts to, it'll actually dip in first and then go around. So I kind of just use a straight edge and line that up on there and kind of see right when you can start to see some light underneath there. And then because we put these marks along the edge, we can count from where the bend starts right here to where it stops over here and see how many inches we have to make that, roughly 75-degree bend. So then what you can do is you can divide the amount of inches it takes to make the bend by the amount of degrees you bent it and get your inches per degree of bend. We already got stuff a little screwed up here due to the ratchet strap holding this together. And that's because when we wound up putting this in the car, it was just a little bit too wide. We were running into the corner on the door right there and over there. So we just put a ratchet strap on it, kind of hold her in a little bit. So now we got to cut some holes in the floor, get the main hoop dropped in. We're going to set it back at a little bit of an angle so that it lines up, because I want that to line up and look nice and kind of try and hide it behind here. But we think we finally got the main hoop in. We have one of our number 12 bars almost in. There's a couple different ways you can do this, but the way we're going to do it is start all the way up there and then come all the way down to the floor. You can do a halo all the way around the top and then have bars that drop from there to there. You can have a bar that goes from there to right there, stop, run your dash bar in between, and then have a bar that comes, just right there. I think this way is going to be the cleanest, so this is how we're going to do it. So I'm starting to like the fit of this number 12 bar a little better now. As you can see, I've also got some tape put where the door X would be and where the forward outer funny car cage bar would be, just to kind of give me an idea of what needs to attach to this bar. It would suck to get this bar in and then realize later when we go to put these other bars in that something's going to be wrong. I think everything's so far so good. I'm going to just tweak the fit a little bit more. You can see the angle doesn't quite line up with the A-pillar of the car right there. And I think the way I'm going to fix that is just get this to drop down a little bit more. Now the obvious way to do that would be to just trim some off the bottom there. But I think what I'm actually going to do is put just a little bend in the tube right about there to kick it in a little bit more. So I got that tube put in the bender and I put a little bend in it. I'm going to throw it in the car and see if it looks any better. Alright, after a lot of work on the fitment of this tube, I think it's finally acceptable. I like the way it was fitting in the car, just there was a big gap up here that was going to be pretty big of a pain in the butt to weld. And check that out. Perfect. There's the view from the front. I got the gap between the bar and the A-pillar pretty minimal. And the angle is almost perfect. Actually really perfect. That gap disappears all at the same time. Well, as you guys can see, I got the other A-pillar bar in, and as I'm sure you guys can also see, it's different. That side is not fitting nearly as good as that side is. I wound up screwing up the cope that goes up to the main hoop, and I wound up needing to take way too much off in order to get it halfway decent, and it's still bad and still needs to get more taken off, which is just going to make the fitment even worse. So I think I'm actually going to go ahead and remake this bar right here and try and get it to look more like this side. Fortunately, I have all my notes from making the driver's side and the passenger side. I should be able to crack this out pretty quickly here. Well, I just spent the last probably 3 or 4 hours getting the tube on that side to match the tube on this side. I think it's finally gonna fit. I think it looks pretty much the same as the other side now. I got the gap on both sides about the same. There, that's right about the middle. So I pretty much got the gap to look the same on both sides. All the bends are in the same spot, so when we go to make our upper windshield bar and the dash bar down below, everything should, you know, be able to stay parallel. I already got them polished off and got the acetone wiped off, so now all that's left to do is tack them in place. Alright, so the next thing we need to work on here is this upper windshield or roof bar, whatever you want to call it. What I'm trying to do is get it so that I can still use my visors as much as possible, still be able to see my rear view mirror as much as possible. There's going to be a diagonal that goes from that corner to the top of where the funny car hoop is, right in this area. That might get in the way of the visors. And I also got to think about having a switch panel mounted to this bar up here for ignition and water pump and all that stuff. I could try and sneak it between the visors and the rear view mirror in this gap up here. Then the passenger side visor wouldn't work because the diagonal running across would sit underneath the passenger side visor. The switch panel would be sticking out through here like that, so this visor wouldn't be able to get used that much. So what I'm thinking we're gonna do is run this bar behind the visors and try and get it so that the visors close about that much, and set the bar right about like this. So I think my plan is put a little bend in it right here to push it up tight against the headliner, come right here to the middle, put another bend in it to come back that way, and then bend back down to the number 12 bar on that side. So we got to get 3 bends in this thing. The one in the middle is going to be out of plane from the other 2 bends, and we got to get it to come down at the same angle on both sides. Make sure that bend is in the middle, and the other 2 bends are the same distance on each side from this one in the middle. So I'm going to look at this a little bit more and try not to screw this up too bad. Alright, we got this bar all done up. I didn't record any of us measuring any of it or doing any of the bends because I was concentrating. This actually turned out really good. I'll be honest, this is the second one that I did because I screwed the first one up. I've got marked on here where I need to cope each side. So I'm gonna set the coping tool up in the vise. I'm gonna be really mad if I cope this and it ends up being too short because I'm actually very happy with how the bends turned out on this. Well, I went ahead and got this upper windshield bar all fitted up and tacked in. I think this bar turned out really nice. It's nice and centered and it's tucked up out of the way of the visors, I can definitely still use the rear view mirror, and I'll be able to mount a switch panel up on the roll bar right here. The next thing I'm going to be working on is going to be putting the bars that run from the main hoop down to like where the shock cross member goes. That's why I got the car spun around in here. As you guys can see, I already got a shock cross member tacked in. Now that's not actually where the shocks are going to mount to. That's kind of just there for some support. Shocks are going to mount to the 4-link brackets, which are in line with the chassis 4-link brackets, which are actually in line with the frame rail here. So the shocks are going to mount to the underside of the frame rail. I kind of mocked it up with the brackets that I had 3D printed, marked out where the shocks approximately are going to mount on the frame rails, and then put that cross member in there. And then I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the ones off the main hoop down at a little bit of an angle and get them to hit that cross member there. Looks like the first thing I got to do is cut out on the speaker deck this area right here, and then this area right here on that side. Well, I got the speaker deck cut out. I wound up needing to cut out a little bit more than I originally intended on, but that's how it goes sometimes. As you guys can see, I have some tape laid out. My plan is to make all of this stuff out of 1.5 inches. I'll show you guys the rules here in a second, but I'm pretty sure I'm allowed to do that. So here's the picture in the rule book with the 2 straight and the X. And this purple stuff here, it's actually this 1 3/8. I don't have any 1 3/8. The next size up I have from that would be my 1.5 inches. Well, this side's for chromoly, this side's the mild steel. So I've got 1.5 inch by 120 wall. If you run 1 5/8, you only need 2, and they can be however long you want. If you use 1.5 inches, they have to be less than 30 inches long, and you only need 2. If you run 1 3/8, then you need 4. It doesn't say anything about how long they can be, and it says a minimum of 2 bars need to be attached to the horizontal portion of the main hoop. And then we've got the 1.25 inch stuff. You need 6 of them. That's where guys end up making like a rear hoop, kind of like that right there. In case you guys missed it in one of my last videos, one of the reasons I lay all this tape up like this, other than to just visualize where the bars are going to go and see how it looks, is because then I can use a little protractor like this and line this up to figure out what the angle that I need to cope the tube at is going to be. I've kind of already got this lined up, and it looks like I'll be needing to cope this tube at about 4 degrees. And since this bar and the bar up there are parallel, I can just put 2 4-degree notches in these in the same plane. Well, it's been a couple hours and I got a couple things done. As you guys can see right here, I've got 2 of the 51 bars put in. The other thing that I did is I reinstalled the upper windshield bar. So if you guys remember where this bar was before, it was probably 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch farther forward. And the reason I moved it back was because it was just really tight up against where the mirror is up there. And I do want to be able to put a switch panel up here, and there is not going to be any way I was going to get a bracket over here. I also have full functionality of the visors now. They actually tuck up in here, and if you want to use the visor, you kind of just have to pop it out of there, and then the visor swings down. Alright guys, we got a couple more bars put in the car since the last time I showed you anything. We got these 2 of the number 51 bars tacked in. Gonna have to wait until I have the anti-roll bar installed to put the other 2 in, because I want to tie those into the anti-roll bar, or where the anti-roll bar kind of mounts to. And then I got a bunch of the rear cage support stuff done. This is what would be like a harness bar on an 850 cage. This is a number 15 bar, the horizontal cage support. And then the 2 vertical cage supports are number 18 bars. Peter's actually here today. He's helping me, and he's working on getting bars. That's gonna go from right here to the back half frame rail right there. And then I'm working on starting the funny car cage. So right here, we got the captain's chair. So now that we have the seat, we can kind of start figuring out where the bars behind my head go. This is my first attempt at making the number 42A bar, the rear inner funny car bar. That's the one that kind of goes right there in the same plane as the main hoop. That one I wound up making too short. This one is plenty long, and I'm starting to get the notch right in here. So this is kind of tricky. I can't use the actual notcher for any of it, so I've just been chipping away at it with the angle grinder. I got a little bit more to go yet. I want that to be 90. I have that zeroed to the tail out there. See if I can get that notch to fit good, and then after that we can measure from here down to there and get that notch cut pretty easily. So now that we have the 42A bar in, we can start working on the what I'm going to call the tic-tac-toe board that is behind all that goes behind your head. Peter calls it the pretzel. I call it the tic-tac-toe board. Anyways, you guys know what I'm talking about. This is basically what we're trying to get to by the end of today. So we got this bar and this bar put in so far. Now we just got to do these two and then these three little ones in here. So the two vertical ones go in first, and then we'll get these three in. We've been working on the funny car portion of the cage. We have a tube half bent, and we have two pieces made out of conduit, none of which are perfect. What we kind of have laid out here is some of the way the door bars are going to be. We got it set out in tape. I'm going to sit in the chair with a helmet on. The only thing the rule says about these funny car bars is that this bar and the one that goes up and over my head needs to be in front of the helmet. A portion of each of those bars needs to be in front of my helmet. So not the whole bar, basically just this intersection point where these two bars meet up here needs to be in front of the helmet. I'm going to try and crawl in here without destroying the tape, put the helmet on, and then Peter's going to check and make sure everything.
Immediately just rips the tape off. No! Nice.
This should give us enough room to fit a window net in here yet. Front mounting point of the window net clip is probably going to be like right here. The window net has to be a minimum of 10 inches wide. And then we also have to fit a gusset between the upper windshield bar and the number 12 bar. A lot of stuff going on in like this area. I went ahead and made this whole funny car bar right here off camera. And the reason I did that is because I figured I'd screwed up the first time. And I was absolutely right. Now that we have some of that figured out, we know how much we're off, I know kind of what I need to do to try and do the second one. So here I made a drawing of how I kind of want this one to be. So that'll be 32 degrees, 8 inches there, 7.5 inches there, and then only 1 inch right there. I don't have it written down, but it was about 1.5 inches. Just kind of gonna scooch everything together a little bit because this entire thing, even though it wound up being too short in the end, the rest of it was all too long. Not exactly sure how it happened, but now I'm gonna try and fix it. So now the tricky part, or another tricky part, is getting the cope right here where it goes onto the number 12 bar right, and then hoping that that lines up over there. There's a lot to play with over there, and we can bend it more if we need to, because I bent it a lot less than I thought I needed to. I'm going to show you guys how I'm planning on getting this cope right here. So you can see we hung a plumb bob from up there on the number 12 bar, and then basically just measured from the center point of that to where the plumb bob is. If we want this to line up with the rear inner funny car bar, that's the distance we have to right here. We measured that distance from the center line. It was 22.5. From inside to inside we got 21.7. I'm going to call that 22 inches to give us a little bit of extra. I basically have this T-square lined up with the edge right here. This is graduated so I can go right to 22 right there. Put my line up right here. Ignore that line, that was the first time I did this and it was in the wrong spot. Well, you guys can see the forward inner funny car bar is kind of taped in here right now. I have high hopes that this one will actually work. We're on bar number 3 now. It needs some tweaking yet. It's over about 2 inches right now. But you can see the cope has fallen off of the tube up there. That cope is also probably a little bit too far off because I gave myself about an extra ½ an inch. This is about the height it's gonna be at. It'll go up when we move it onto this tube, but if we take some away from it, it's gonna bring it back down, which I think everything lines up pretty good there. You can see this bend and this bend are pretty much in line. I'm gonna massage this a little bit more and hopefully we can get this one to fit. All right, guys, as you've seen, we got a lot of the roll cage stuff done. So what we're gonna do right now is push the whole thing outside. My Uncle Jim's coming over with the forklift, and we're gonna try and pull the whole body off without wrecking anything. There we have it. We got the body tucked away over there, and there's the chassis, the whole roll cage pretty much. Now we're gonna have a lot better time welding everything together. We got a couple more tubes we need to fit in here, the door bars, and some of the funny car bars are actually just taped in right now. Next episode we're gonna be working on all the suspension stuff. We got some brackets for the front suspension that we'll be showing you, and we'll be getting the whole rear end housing put together and mocked up in the car. And by the end of next episode, this will all be a rolling chassis. We'll paint everything and put the body back on. That's gonna be it for today's video, guys. I really hope you enjoyed us getting all these bars bent up and putting the roll cage. Hopefully you learned something, or maybe at least were inspired by something. Sorry this video took so long to get out, but if I was posting a video every week, there'd be about 2 bars that we would do in each video. I promise there's gonna be more videos to come. I'm actually signed up for a chassis inspection already, April 25th, 2025. So we're gonna have the chassis done by then, hopefully. With that being said, guys, thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, all that good stuff. We'll see you guys in the next video.